Hello and welcome to the technical overview of the integration of Tiny Pictures into SAP Commerce. So what we're looking at right now is the homepage of Tiny Pictures, and that's the homepage of the service that we want to integrate. Tiny Pictures is an image processing CDN, as you can see here from the headline, and that means it's a CDN, so it's a content delivery network, so it means it delivers images for websites. So when you access a website, the images are not loaded from the server where the website is actually stored, but they come from Tiny Pictures, and of course this reduces the server load that's coming to the server, which is actually hosting the website. And the idea of Tiny Pictures is that you have an original image and you store this on your own server. But in the integration of your website, you point to something at Tiny Pictures. So it's a URL at Tiny Pictures, and you integrate this URL into your website, and then the image will be delivered by Tiny Pictures. What Tiny Pictures does in this case is, on the first access from a customer, it loads the original image from your server, and then it puts it in the Tiny Pictures cache, and then it will deliver it to one customer, and of course on further accesses to all the other customers which will access the same image. And so that's the that's the normal functionality of a CDN, but this one is an image processing CDN. So what you can do is you can put URL parameters on the Tiny Pictures URL, and this tells Tiny Pictures to modify the image. So you can resize, you can even trim the picture, you can just take a part of the picture, you can rotate it, you can mirror it, you can even define a grayscale for it, so you have a grayscale image out of a colored image. So that's the general functionality of Tiny Pictures. But the integration to SAP Commerce gives one more feature, because SAP Commerce has a concept how these CDNs can be integrated. But they always assume that this service also stores the image. So the idea from Tiny Pictures to load the image from the original server and then put it in the own cache is not really compatible with the standards of SAP Commerce. That's why we made a small modification to the Tiny Pictures service here. So we put a Azure storage in front of that. That's integrated on the Tiny Pictures side, so you don't have to worry about that. If you want to integrate it to SAP Commerce, you just integrate a few extensions. You can upload the images to Tiny Pictures, and then you can use the Tiny Pictures URL just like the standard. So you can add URL parameters to it to activate image processing on the image that you have uploaded. And of course, in SAP Commerce, you can have different versions of that image. So you can have it in different sizes. You can have it mirrored. You can have it rotated. You can have it in a grayscale image. But you only upload the image once, and then you configure the image processing features that you want later on. And now let's see how it's actually technically integrated into SAP Commerce. So what we're looking at right now is the SAP Commerce installation. So I just loaded this into Visual Studio Code, so we have a representation of the folder structure here. And as you can see from the folder names, SAP Commerce used to be called Hybris, and it's still in the source code, it's still in the folder names here. So we have a Hybris folder, and the installation is in there. Then we have a bin folder. All the extensions are located there, and you can see there's the platform folder, there's the modules folder. So these are for extensions coming from SAP. But of course, the Tiny Picture integrator is not from SAP, so it's put in the custom folder where you also put your project extensions. So when I open this, there's the Tiny Pictures connector and the Tiny Pictures connector backoffice. Tiny Pictures connector contains all the services and the functionality for the integration of Tiny Pictures, and the backoffice contains the backoffice configuration. So all the controls that we can use in the backoffice are defined in this extension here. So it's just following the standards from SAP Commerce to have two different extensions for these purposes. Okay, so now how do we integrate it? We need to put it into the local extensions. I've already opened that, and you will find this in the config folder and then local extensions XML. So up here there are a few extensions coming out of the box from SAP. That's just the reference implementation. So yeah, I'm just using the standard reference implementation for B2C and B2B here. And in the end, I've added the two extensions from Tiny Pictures. So it's the Tiny Pictures connector and the Tiny Pictures connector backoffice. And of course, you also have to provide credentials to log into the service, and typically you do this in the local properties. So let's look at that. And you can see we have to set a username, we have to set a password, we have to set an API key, and all these values you will get when you sign up to the service of Tiny Pictures, and you become a customer of Tiny Pictures, and then you get your login account, and then you can put these values in here. Okay, but there are a few more things that you can configure. So these are the things that you always have to set. The rest can work out of the box like it is, but of course you can reconfigure it if you have different needs than we use in this demonstration here. So let's look at the out-of-the-box configuration. That's in Tiny Pictures connector, and there we have project properties. So these are merged together with the local properties, of course. And here you can see there are already placeholders for the username, for the password. Those are overwritten by the local properties if you install that. And here are some properties you don't have to override if you're happy with what's coming out of the box. So there's a URL for the API, the URL how to access Tiny Pictures, and yeah, some other settings as well. In general, we have to activate the storage strategy. So that's the standard interface from SAP Commerce to integrate storage strategies, and the Tiny Pictures connector provides a storage strategy that will store things in Tiny Pictures. In Hybris or in SAP Commerce, it works like that. We have folders in the system. That's just a concept of a folder. It's not really a folder on the hard disk, or it doesn't have to be. In this case, it would store things at the Tiny Pictures server. But anyway, we define folders in the SAP Commerce system, and when we store a media, an image, in the folder Tiny Pictures, then it will use the storage strategy from Tiny Pictures, and it will upload it to the Tiny Pictures server. So here we define the folder name. If you want something else, of course, you can put in something else here, but out of the box, we just called this folder Tiny Pictures. The integration, like we use it, uses several storage strategies. So the default one, the local storage strategy, is still active, and we have to provide, or we have to tell Tiny Pictures in which folder local storage can be done. And by default, that's the images folder, so we also use that. So that means when we store something in the images folder in the SAP Commerce, it will be stored locally on the SAP Commerce server, and when we store something in the Tiny Pictures folder, it will store it on the Tiny Pictures server instead, and we can upload and download from there. And of course, in theory, it would also be possible to integrate more storage strategies further than this. So we could have, I don't know, an Azure storage that we handle on our own, not the one that is integrated in Tiny Pictures. We could add the Amazon cloud. We could add, yeah, some other cloud provider or CDN provider could be integrated as well. But again, this is SAP Commerce standard, that we can have several storage strategies pointing to different folders, or the other way around, the folders pointing to those storage strategies. And as I said, out of the box, we still use the local storage, and we use the Tiny Pictures storage. And now let's see how it looks like in the back office. At first, we want to look at how things work out of the box. So what we're looking at right now is the reference implementation, the electronic storefront from the reference implementation. You can see it's coming from the URL electronics.local, and that's just pointing to my local host. It's an alias that I put into the local host, and again, that's a SAP Commerce standard. So nothing special about that. And yeah, you've seen that I've already integrated the Tiny Pictures extensions, but the images are still stored locally, because this is what the standard initialization does here. And it's just a initialized system with the reference implementation. And now let's open this image here from this central banner in a new tab. Open image in new tab, and we can see it's coming from the same URL. It's also coming from electronics.local, so it's pointing to my local host. And now let's go to the back office and see if we can do some modifications here. Not Back to the Future, but back office. Should be this one here. Here we go. So let's log in as admin like that. Okay. Okay, first thing you might notice is that this looks a little different than you might expect from your back office. So we have these development mode buttons here, but that's just a hybrid standard, the back office development mode, which I've switched on. Maybe you've seen in the local properties before. So this is not coming from Tiny Pictures here, these three buttons up there. Okay, so let's start with this image. So we've seen the image comes from the local storage, and now we want to see how it looks like in the database. So I'm going to multimedia and media, and then I will search for this image that we've seen. Okay, takes a little time. Here we go. And this was the file name. So here you can see, okay, this one also matches my search, but I want to have one of these. You can see one in the online version and one on the staged version. I'm directly working on the online version. That doesn't mean that synchronization doesn't work. So it does work to synchronize from stage to online, but yeah, I want to have quick results, so I'm directly working on the online version, which is presented to the customer and presented on the storefront, and the staged version obviously is for modeling. So I'm opening the online version feature here. Here we go. And I can see, okay, here's a preview of this. I can see the URL. You can see it starts with a slash. That means it's pointing to the local SAP Commerce server here. And now I can just say I want to upload this. And this one comes from the Tiny Pictures extensions. So this button to upload a local stored image to Tiny Pictures. So I'm pressing that. I have to confirm. And then it's uploading. And you can see the buttons have changed. I can download it now. Before I could upload, so the system recognizes where the images are stored. The preview is still there, so the image is still accessible. And from the URL now we can see it's now stored on Tiny Pictures under our account, and that's the Hybris account. And of course you're going to have a different account here, so it wouldn't be hybris.tinypictures in your case, but it would be your company name .tiny pictures, obviously. Okay, so it's already there, and now let's go back to the home page and reload this. And now this picture should come from Tiny Pictures already. So let's check that. I'm opening it in a new tab again. You can already see from the icon up here that it's now different than the one uploaded before. And when we go here, we can see it's coming from Tiny Pictures. So this when we do this, this image is not delivered by the SAP Commerce server anymore, and of course by that it will take away server load from your system, and these images will be loaded from Tiny Pictures like that. Okay, so what else can we do? Let's go back to the back office. So first of all, what I've done with this button here, with this upload button, is just the standard move feature from Hybris. So we could also do it down here. So we see here it's stored in the folder Tiny Pictures, and if I remove that and I choose images like that, and then I say move media, then it's doing exactly the same like we've seen before. You can see from the buttons here, now I can upload it again, and you can see from the URL that it's now again locally stored. So these buttons up here just point to this move media button, and it's just making it a little easier for you to handle this. You don't have to choose the folder. These buttons already know which are the correct folders, and that's coming from the configuration we've seen previously. Okay, but yeah, for the next feature I want to show, I need this uploaded again, and first of all, I can show you one more feature. So we've seen we can use the moved media, which is the standard from Hybris. We've added these toolbar buttons here, so you can do it directly. But we've also added these toolbar buttons on the list view. So what we can do is we can choose, for example, these images here. And then upload several at once. Right now it didn't update, so this one here, let's see, is is already stored in the images again, but this one hasn't been updated, so I'm performing a new search. Now we can see everything is in the images again, and now I can choose all 4 of those and say upload, and then I want to upload all these 4 at once. And here we go. Now they are in tiny pictures. The sync status is not synced anymore because, yeah, I didn't use the sync mechanism to upload all of them. I uploaded the online version and the staged version separately, so the system thinks there are changes that need to be synchronized, but again, I don't have to worry about synchronizing right now. So let's go back to the one I was working on. So that was the online version of this one here. Here we go. Yeah, it is on Tiny Pictures right now. But we've seen that Tiny Pictures can not only store files and deliver files, it can also modify the images with image processing. And to configure that, we've added the Tiny Pictures configuration in here. And now let's add something. What's coming out of the box from the extension is the different modifications for the different sizes, which are used for product images or for banners and so on. Of course, we can add a new configuration here, and that's what I want to do. So I'm saying add here, and I'm starting with tp config, no typos, and then let's say gray, because I want to have a grayscale image for that. Let's say done. It's already in here. It's not saved yet, but I want to modify this first. Okay, what are the options that we can do? We can trim the image, so take away parts from the picture on the sides. We can flip and flop, which means mirror vertically or mirror horizontally. We can rotate the image here, or in this case, I want to have a grayscale image, so I can choose grayscale. And I'm saying save. And I have to save it on this item as well because I've added this configuration. So I'm saying save here again. And you can see now it's a grayscale image. You can see from the URL when you go to the end that it says grayscale true. So what we've configured here in this Tiny Pictures configuration is added as a URL parameter in the end of the URL, which is pointing to Tiny Pictures, and Tiny Pictures knows how to process the image and deliver it in a modified format. And it's gray here, and now let's see if it's already on the storefront, because I was working on the online version. It should work. So I'm going here, I'm reloading the site, and here it is in grayscale. Maybe not that fancy here, but of course, if you want to have, for example, the same image grayed out if it's deactivated, and then with color if it's activated, you don't have to modify it yourself. Tiny Pictures can do this for you. But of course, we don't only want to work on existing images. Of course, in a project, you also want to bring new images into your system. And now let's see how this is done. So I'm going to the back office again, and I'm on media. So I'm going to the list view, and I'm pressing the plus to create a new media item. And I call this my neusta banner. Banner like that. Let's put it in a catalog version. Electronics, content, catalog. Okay, multi-country is in place here. Content catalog. There it was. Content catalog. Let's work on the staged version. It doesn't matter because I don't want to integrate it on the storefront right now. And of course, the normal way would be to work on the staged version as long as you're modeling and then synchronize to online, which is possible, of course. Let's say next, and then we want to upload an image. And this is going to my example images, and we have a neusta banner up here. You can see it in the preview. So I'm taking this one. Let's say next, and as a folder I want to directly put it into Tiny Pictures, so that I don't want to store it locally in between. I just directly want to upload this. So I can choose the folder Tiny Pictures, and then I'm saying done. And here we go. Let's open it directly with this link here. And you can see we have the preview. You can see the URL is pointing to Tiny Pictures. And of course, I could add a Tiny Pictures configuration if I want to do image processing on that. So yeah, this is also possible. But of course, if you're working in a project, typically you don't bring the images to your system with a wizard in the back office. So that's possible, but the standard way is to do it with impacts. And for that I'm going to the administration console, so it should be here. Administration console, I'm logging in as admin again. Here we go. And I'm going to console and impacts import. Here we are. Okay, so I'm just copy and pasting here something. What can we see? It's an impacts file to bring new database entries into the database. We want to create a new media, so we're saying insert update media, and then we have to specify a catalog version, which is a little bit complicated. That's why I made a macro for that, and the content catalog is content electronics content catalog staged is down here. Okay, so what else do we have? We call this neusta JPEG, and we use this as a code and also as a real file name. Then we are using a translator which will upload the image from my file system into the database, and for that, yeah, we have to use this translator, and then we're specifying a mim type, and we are specifying a folder. So this is where the file is stored on my hard disk, so it's just in neusta JPEG, and the mim type is image JPEG, and I want to store it directly in the Tiny Pictures folder, so I don't store it locally at any time. I'm directly uploading it to Tiny Pictures. Okay, and now let's import this one here. That was successful, and now let's look for it in the back office. Here we are. And I'm saying neusta like that. The banner is still in there, which we've done with the wizard here in the back office, and this one came from the impacts. So it's the Hybris logo, which I've uploaded, and as you can see here, it's coming from Tiny Pictures. Okay, and the next feature is image conversion. That's also a standard from Hybris. So Hybris has interfaces to convert images. So the idea is we have such an image in a high resolution, and then we want to have smaller resolution images like thumbnails, or just optimized for mobile devices or something like that. And this can be done with Hybris. Out of the box, Hybris doesn't integrate a conversion strategy. The recommendation, if you're working on local storage, is to integrate ImageMagick, which has the algorithms to resize an image. But of course, in our case, this can be done by Tiny Pictures on the Tiny Pictures server already, so we don't have to integrate anything. And the Tiny Pictures connector already comes with a Tiny Pictures conversion strategy. And now let's see how this works. So we have this image uploaded in a high resolution here, and now we put it into a media container, and I want to create a new one. And let's say on which catalog we are working. That should be electronics content catalog stage. This is where we've uploaded it, and let's call that the neusta container without typos container. And we also use this as a qualifier, and then let's say done. Okay, and I can save it here, so it's actually in this container. And now let's open this one. Okay, here we go. We see we have a media in here, and we also already see the button convert missing medias. That is, as I said, a standard feature from SAP Commerce. There are interfaces. We need a conversion strategy to do that. And for that, conversion strategies, okay, another name would be conversion groups. And these already come from the Tiny Pictures connector. Okay, I shouldn't scroll when the pull down is open here, I assume. And you can already see for the standard setups in SAP Commerce, we have already provided conversion groups here. So we have a banner conversion for banners, and we have a gallery conversion for product images. Now let's assume this is a product image, so we are choosing the gallery conversion with Tiny Pictures. And now I can open this one here. And you can see these are the formats that are expected for gallery images, so different resolutions. I put it in the highest resolution, but I didn't mark that. So it will create this also out of the picture I've uploaded. Okay, then we've looked at this. Let's close this one again. And the conversion group that I've added here must be saved. And unfortunately, it closes this window. And now I open it again. To actually convert the missing medias. And as I said, for example, the recommended way for local storage with a ImageMagick would actually do the processing on the SAP server, of course. But in our case, with Tiny Pictures, we just need to add a few URL parameters in the end, and then we will have a converted image. And let's look at that. So we say convert missing medias. Here they are. From the preview, you might assume that it hasn't worked, but if I open this one here, you can see that it has. The preview is there. You can see it here. The preview is there. We have the URL, which is still pointing to the same image that I've uploaded, but now there are some parameters added. So we are changing the width, and yeah, we are only changing the width, and the other thing is taking the same dimension in here. So we are only changing one side because we don't want to modify the way the image appears. We just want to reduce the resolution here. Okay, so now we have all these images in there. They are all loaded with different URL parameters. And of course, these don't only exist in this container, but when we go back to media and search for neusta here, let's open this one. You can see this is the original image I've uploaded, and these are the other images which are just created out of that with different URL parameters. So we only uploaded it once, and Tiny Pictures is doing the rest for us. And now, last but not least, we have a cron job. So we've already seen we can upload several images at once. We can just choose them on the list view here, and then, okay, in this case, we would download them because they are already on Tiny Pictures. If we had other medias like that, we could upload them. So these are stored locally in the images folder, and if I select those, I can upload several at once. But if we want to upload a whole catalog, it might be too much effort to select every images in this view, and for that we have created a cron job that can do that. So let's go to System and Background Processes and cron jobs. And actually the cron job that we've created is a subtype of cron job, so it's a Tiny Pictures move image cron job. So let's create that one. So I'm taking the error here, and I don't want to have a cron job, I want to have a subtype of that, so I'm opening this one and I scroll all the way down, and there's the Tiny Pictures move cron job. Let's select this one. Okay, and then we call it move to tiny. Source folder should be images. Target folder should be Tiny Pictures, like that. And we have to specify a catalog version we want to work on. So let's take the electronics content catalog staged, for example. And then we say done. So this would assume that you have a server which is, I'm opening this one, this would assume you have a server which is fully functional, which is storing everything locally, and And now you want to move all your images to Tiny Pictures. And for that we have the Tiny Pictures Move Cron Job tab here, where we can specify exactly the things I've just specified in the wizard. And now we can run this cron job by just pressing up here. Of course we can define a trigger to do this regularly, but yeah, I think this is a task you would rather do manually once, and then it's uploaded and then you can work with it. So I'm saying execute this cron job. I'm saying yes. And now it should start the thing in the background. You can see it up here. There's a process running, and when we look into that, we have a status bar or a progress bar. And we can see how many of these images were already uploaded. And of course we can abort that if we want to. So let's say abort, yes. It takes a little time because yeah, it doesn't stop in the middle of one image. It checks after every image if there's an abort request. So now it's aborted, and the status is unknown. It's not aborted because otherwise a restart is a little bit complicated, and we wanted to make it as simple as possible. So now this has run, and now let's go back to the media folders here and see if that worked. So I'm going to media. And now let's make an advanced search, and we look for images which are located in Tiny Pictures. Here we are, and now we search for those. Here we go. And you can see there are some, well, actually so many things were uploaded that I don't actually find the ones I've uploaded manually. So all these that we've seen here were uploaded by this cron job. So that would be another option to upload or download yeah, faster with this cron job and not doing it manually. And that's the end of the presentation. These are the features from the Tiny Pictures integrator on SAP Commerce.